On a warm spring afternoon in 1962, a 10-year-old boy playing in his dusty backyard near Mexico City unearthed a shiny, heavy metallic cylinder. To him, it looked like a discarded piece of treasure, a fascinating mechanical trinket. Without a second thought, he slipped the heavy metal object into his left trouser pocket and carried it inside. He had no way of knowing that he had just introduced an existential threat into his home. The object was a 5 Curie cobalt -60 capsule, an industrial radiography source possessing enough raw ionizing energy to act as a localized nuclear reactor. The countdown to a complete familial eradication had just begun. A few days later, on the 1st of April, the boy's mother found the heavy capsule while doing laundry. Assuming it was merely a piece of junk or a random hardware tool, she carried it into the kitchen and casually tossed it into a cutlery drawer right next to the spoons and forks. For the next 100 days, that small drawer would remain the geographic center of the family's existence. It was completely unshielded, continuously vomiting highly penetrating gamma rays in every direction. Entirely unaware that an invisible tempest of radiation was quietly tearing through their DNA, the lethal reality was completely air-gapped from their domestic life. The boy was the first to fall. Within days of carrying the capsule, a dark, bruised lesion appeared on his left thigh. He casually told his mother he had scraped it playing football, but as the weeks passed, the flesh turned violently red, then began to blister, and finally hardened into a necrotic blackened husk. When he was taken to the hospital, the doctors were completely baffled. They assumed it was a severe infection, prescribing standard antibiotics and bruise ointments. They were catastrophically wrong. The child was suffering from localized 4th-degree radiation burns. The high energy waves had directly shredded his cellular structure. On the 29th of April, the boy died in agonizing pain. The family was shattered by grief. The boy's mother, who was 6 months pregnant, tried to numb her sorrow by focusing on household chores. She spent hours every day standing at the kitchen counter, preparing meals and washing dishes. Tragically, the drawer containing the cobalt -60 capsule was perfectly aligned with her abdomen. She was effectively standing point blank in front of a continuously firing radiological weapon. Soon, her body began to fail. Her cells were dying at an alarming rate. She developed a severe case of anorexia. Her hair fell out in clumps. It was a cruel irony. She was standing beside the lethal source to prepare food for her family, yet she was slowly starving to death from the inside out. Deep within her womb, a silent secondary tragedy was unfolding. Cobalt -60 emits gamma rays at staggering energy levels of 1.17 and 1.33 megaelectron volts. These photons easily bypass the mother's organic tissues. The cellular division of the fetus was completely arrested. In mid-July, the mother and her unborn child succumbed to the massive, fractionated dose. Slowly but surely, the rest of the household began to collapse. The grandmother, who had moved in to help, and the 2-year-old sister, who played on the kitchen floor, both absorbed lethal quantities of radiation. They, too, were marked for death. Which brings us back to the only person left standing, the father. While his entire family withered away and died in agony, he remained largely asymptomatic. To the local police investigators of 1962, the situation looked deeply sinister. This wasn't a viral outbreak. This looked like a calculated, cold-blooded execution. The authorities were convinced that the father was a sociopathic murderer. Imagine his psychological torment, having just buried his family only to be dragged into an interrogation room and aggressively accused of their murder. The investigators tore the house apart. They ripped up floorboards, seized food samples, and searched every bottle for traces of arsenic, thallium, or rat poison. They were obsessively hunting for a chemical agent, completely blind to the physical one. In a horrifying twist of fate, every single detective who searched that kitchen stood mere inches from the true killer. They opened the cutlery drawer, rummaged past the spoons, and completely ignored the small metal cylinder. While they interrogated an innocent man, the unshielded capsule continued to silently irradiate the police force. But lately, something's been off in that kitchen. Stored in the cabinet just above the capsule were several transparent drinking glasses. Over the months, the family had noticed the glass tumblers mysteriously turning a dark, muddy black. This was the only physical warning the environment ever gave. The phenomenon is known as color centers. The high-energy gamma rays were literally colliding with the atomic structure of the glass, utilizing Compton scattering to violently knock electrons out of their orbits. These displaced electrons became trapped in microscopic voids in the material, permanently staining the glass black. It was a solid-state dosimeter recording every single ounce of the lethal radiation. As the police prepared to build a murder case against the father, a routine medical review changed everything. A diligent physician from Clinic 19 analyzed the deceased mother's hematology reports. He noticed an extreme case of leukopenia. Her white blood cell count had plummeted to near zero, while her bone marrow had entirely ceased functioning. Traditional poisons do not destroy the human body in this specific, targeted manner. Only one thing did. Slowly but surely, they realized they were not dealing with a toxicologist's nightmare, but a physicist's. The father wasn't a murderer, he was the sole survivor of a radiological catastrophe. Slowly but surely, they realized they were not dealing with a toxicologist's nightmare, but a physicist's. The father wasn't a murderer, he was the sole survivor of a radiological catastrophe. As they stepped out of their vehicles before they even reached the front yard, their Geiger counters spiked violently. As they breached the front door, the standard clicking of the instruments merged into a continuous high-pitched scream. Following the invisible gradient of energy, they were led directly to the kitchen drawer. Using specialized mechanical arms and heavy lead shielding, they finally extracted the 5 Curie capsule, ending the house's lethal reign. For the remaining family members, the intervention arrived far too late. The 2-year-old sister, whose rapidly growing cells had absorbed the radiation, like a sponge, passed away in August. The grandmother, whose bone marrow was entirely liquefied by the gamma rays, died of acute radiation sickness in October. The father's murder charges were immediately dropped. He was allowed to walk free, returning to the empty shell of a house as the sole survivor of his bloodline. But how did he survive when everyone else perished? The answer lies in the cold, unforgiving laws of physics. Science provides a ruthlessly precise mathematical explanation for his survival. The inverse square law: radiation intensity drops exponentially the further you move from the source. Because the father worked long hours away from the home and slept in a bedroom separated from the kitchen by thick concrete walls, he absorbed a significantly lower dose. If he had absorbed this dose all at once, it would have killed him. But because it was fractionated over 4 months, his cellular biology had just enough time to enact emergency repairs. The radiation didn't take his life, but it took everything else. The continuous bombardment of gamma rays completely destroyed his reproductive tissues, leaving him permanently and irreversibly sterile. It is a tragedy of devastating irony. The police had aggressively accused him of slaughtering his entire family just so he could start a new life. But the cobalt-60 capsule had already ensured that he would never ever be able to create a new life again. His solitary existence stands as a grim testament to the invisible, eternal horrors of our atomic age. His solitary existence stands as a grim testament to the invisible, eternal horrors of our atomic age.